Hey guys, welcome to another YouTube video. Today we're going to talk about one specific base position that we use in mobility training. So this position, you're probably all familiar with it, is the pigeon pose. So with the pigeon pose, we can target different areas of the hips specifically and open up more range of motion. We can work on hip external rotation, we can work on hip extension, and depending on the angle that we're using, we're targeting different areas or getting different outcomes. So today we want to show you specifically which setup of the pigeon pose gives you which results.
So let's talk about the pigeon position on the ground, which a lot of people are doing. And we're going to discuss some different options there and different intentions of this pose. So when we see people usually train or are in the pigeon position, usually this looks like exactly like this. Okay, so the femur here in the front part is completely turned outwards, and we have full knee flexion. And from here, most likely all people are leaning completely forward, which is fine, obviously, when the intention is to only stretch out the glute medius and glute maximus, right? So you get, obviously, a quite nice stretch in your glutes, but the question here is, what is the intention of that person to use this position? And most likely, they try, in our opinion, they try to open up more external rotation. But in this case, if they chose this position, this is completely wrong. Of course, glute medius and glute maximus are external rotators of the hip, but not the main external rotators. So if you want to target the deep stuff, gluteus minimus, and especially the piriformis, we have to have and work with other angles here of the front leg. So, what do I mean by this? The femur should be completely facing forward, and we should maintain or are able to maintain a 90-degree angle here in the front leg. So when I'm here in this position, this should be the right position, and I can play around by leaning more forward or stay here depending on how intense the stretch is for you, right? Always make sure you think of this anterior pelvic tilt, so tailbone to the ceiling, and a tall chest. So not rounded within posterior pelvic tilt. So there I feel no stretch at all, okay? So again, to sum up this variation, if you want to target external rotation, the deep stuff in your hip, choose a 90-degree angle here and the femur facing forward instead of outwards and full knee flexion, okay? This position is totally fine if you want to work on the rear leg, for example, for hip extension. So if I choose to train hip extension here in the rear leg, this is obviously completely fine, because in this case I may be a little bit more stable and stronger and more compact in this position, so I can really focus on that rear leg and can work on some extension work of the rear hip. So don't get me wrong, this is just different positions, again, with different intentions, and you should really know what you're doing or what you want before you start and going into a certain position.
So obviously the pigeon base position requires some prerequisites as well. So you need decent hip extension and you need decent hip external rotation to get into this position. So let's imagine I'm trying to get into this position, but there's just no way that I can stay here in that 90-degree angle, maintain that angle, and do my pails and rails or whatever I'm trying to do. So there are always regressions that we can do. And in this case, if we're focusing on hip external rotation, so the front leg of the pigeon pose, then we can also just take a box or something else and elevate our front leg and work on hip external rotation in basically an elevated pigeon position. So this is really high. You can also use a bench and just gradually work your way down. So the lower you go, the more hip extension you have in that pose again, and the higher you are, the less hip extension is required or is in that position that you're doing. And this way you can really focus on that hip external rotation using the same cues. You want to maintain that 90-degree angle here. You feel a deep stretch in that glute area, in that outer area here. And again, you want to make sure that you get that anterior pelvic tilt, and with that tilt you can lean forward or maintain that straight spine. So you don't want to just round down like this. Get that tailbone towards the ceiling, and then if you already feel a deep stretch, just stay here. Otherwise you can lean forward and then do your hip external rotation work there. And as I said, gradually work your way down towards the ground. So the key takeaways from this little video about the pigeon pose, pigeon base position is, first of all, know your intention, know what you're trying to train. Are you training hip external rotation? Are you just trying to get a stretch? Are you training hip extension? What is your intention with this specific position? And then get into the specific or into the angles that will get you the best results for the intention that you're having. Second, really try to train smart. If something doesn't feel right, then don't force yourself to get into the position. If 90-degree angle in the front leg in that pigeon pose doesn't feel right for you, don't hesitate to do something else or to back off of that range of motion. And that leads us to the third key takeaway, that is regress when necessary. You don't have to do it on the ground. You can always choose a regression to make sure that you can do this or be in that position safely and work in that position safely. Thanks for watching today's video. If you enjoyed it, please leave a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel.